Scalable, Skeletal, Escalator, the title, it almost emerged inside of my mind almost as a sound when it arrived. And I have for some time been interested in working with an experience of a live artwork that actually moves the visitor through multiple places and multiple spaces on a kind of journey that is a bit self-authored, so that there's not a, let's say, a predetermined way to visit the exhibition, but that the visitor is themselves engaged in that, the authorship of their experience, while also giving enough of a structure to be able to sort of inhabit and to find oneself in. My interest is always like structural change and trying to work upon that in some kind of creative way. So to use actually a space of an exhibition to become a space actually of reflection on exactly this, like the what is this thing that we inhabit and that we identify with as a body, as that contributes to our identity, but how might that story be retold, or how could we reconsider that story in order to better organize the way our bodies come together, and how and what we do with those bodies, how we live together. So you could argue that any experience is immersive because we're always smelling, we're always sensing, we're always feeling things. But to what degree are we called upon to recognize that or become aware of it? And to what degree do we suppress other kind of sensory information in order to like let the visual dominate? And therefore, like with the visualizing technologies, we have also our modes of rationalization and our modes of intellectuality and verbal communication, and so all of the kind of loaded things that go along with the visual as the dominant modality. And I think that for me there's like something very deep about working to actually unify a human sensorium. I think that we, like as a society, we would make different kinds of choices if the visual were not as dominant. I think we would organize ourselves very differently, we would make categories very differently. So I think that's, deep down there's like, I think that concern. It's not just like sensory for the sake of, and yes, sensory for the sake of more pleasure, why not? Like, yes, pleasure I think is a powerful feeling and can also be an effective and political tool. But I think that for me it's about that. It's like if all of our organizational structures and are built upon this over use of one particular sense, and that the history of how we think about that, we won't be able to make the kinds of structural change that I believe we need. There's something, again, very experimental about the way that I'm deciding to work with this time here at Kunsthalle. So my ambition was never to really create an entirely finished from beginning to end, and like we know what it is and we just like unfold it every day. But this sense of like trying things out. So I think when it happened that like the entire team of performers, and including myself, had to go into quarantine, there was this kind of question of like, it can also be an exhibition. And it was, I think for me, this play of format is maybe this is the most object-heavy work that I've done. But I thought that each of these contributions also from different collaborators also holds a certain kind of space and resonates in a particular kind of way, also because everything that's here was kind of emerges out of that process. So it wasn't that there was any disconnected part somehow. So I felt that somehow, even without the choreographic unfolding of the performers, that nonetheless there is a choreography of the objects that's here, like how things are installed, where they are installed, the fact that everything that is installed has this potential of movement or change or transformation. So even if it's sort of in a still state, like the fact that you have things on wheels, that there's all of this potential motion in all of it. Also in upstairs as well with the paintings when they're hanging, or maybe you see one that's like slightly, the ones that rotate. I felt like for me these objects are also performing their choreographies. Certainly it's another experience without the dancers. What I learned by keeping the exhibition open that week was also that there's a certain I think it's the rate of change, the potential for change. So of course all objects and all things are in a state of change and transformation. It's just that with plastics and leather and objects that we have different kind of lengths of time or different durations and different rates of change. So I sort of feel like when the exhibition is empty, you still have that slow rate of change is unfolding in its choreographic way. But yeah, the performers being present, I think, activates that awareness to change and transformation, because you see these like extreme and very, very quick and immediate, so you sort of also get even a richer sense of what is our human capacity and what it maybe is our specialness as humans. I mean, I tend to be very negative about us as a species in general, but there's something about this exhibition which also shows me something about the particular capacities of humans and our imaginations and how we're able to transform not only our own bodies, but space, experience of time through our form of engagement. And I think that's that special thing that, like, when the dancers are here, they really bring that out. And it's of course also extremely challenging and a worthwhile craft to, like, that precision of what it means to execute something that's scripted or exactly set. There's also always the fear that you mess up or that you don't quite do it right or something. And let's say in these kind of works, it's less clear what's the value system at play, like what, but nonetheless, yes, you can I think we feel together when something has a kind of power in the space, when something speaks, when a sequence of movements or when a certain engagement, when it resonates, when it sort of speaks to the people present in that room. And that's kind of then what you're after, like in these performances where you have set material, a pool of knowledge that you pull from, but you surrender to the unknown. We're surrendering to what the visitor brings with them energetically, how they organize themselves in space, how they might react or respond. So that surrender is terrifying. It's always nerve-wracking, actually. So, but it also awakens you. So you get this sort of heightened state of awareness and responsiveness, almost like a kind of, it cultivates an almost like animal instinct way of like responding. And I think that's like that's such a worthwhile experience for me that I kind of accept the nervousness that of course like comes with that all of that uncertainty, all of that movement. It's movement. It's just it's flow, and you have to then trust something that's deeper, that's a little bit beyond verbal, rational forms of communication, into like something that I don't really know what to call that, but that way that we are these like social beings responding to so much detail all the time, and in active interaction and world making together. I'm unfolding a research process that began long ago and that sort of like continues, you know, in these forms and different transformations. And I think those interests in addressing all of the senses, for example, that's where, you know, that need or necessity to go beyond visual representation of things led me to certain collaborations with architects or with smell researcher like Cecil Tolas and composers. So really kind of, there was sort of what I could generate. I think the occasions kind of show, like, you know, the occasions draw out in me this creating music. They demanded it of me. So it's like that new format demanded a certain kind of music, and I generated that kind of music. It wasn't really the other way around, that I was sort of like thinking about music and then put it into the show. So there's a way that I think I let format guide or like demand certain necessities. So I felt like the more I experimented with format, the more that seemed to clearly ask me to approach different people that maybe would have a specialization in something that was beyond my pool of knowledge. And in doing so, that just created really like interesting conversations with people that I learned so much, and I do learn and continue to learn so much from these relations with people who have different skill sets, different knowledge sets, different backgrounds than myself. Once I've brought people, let's say, into my life in this way, because my work and life are very entangled, I'm curious to see what can deepen, or what you can generate over like just a longer relation, like kind of get it going way outside of this object ontology, which requires like, okay, contemporary art, that means you present something new, and then the next invitation you present something new again and something new. Once I started with the occasions, I just let go of that anxiety altogether. I said, okay, this is just a long, continuous process, and basically like institutional shows are these opportunities to open the window onto an ongoing a process of research that started long ago and will continue long into the future, and it's just like a chance to like open a window onto that process. So for me, these I see me as like we're involved in each other's lives, like with me and my collaborators, we're present in each other's, and actually a very common ecological interaction, maybe the most common ecological interaction, is actually cooperation and collaboration in different ways, rather than competition or conflict, actually, or predation. So I wanted somehow that both the working process to kind of give birth to like a format that would also kind of speak to the content of the work itself. And for me, that content is very much about the human story of the body. Like, how do we, particularly in this part of the world, in the Western world, how do we arrive to the notion of the body that we currently have, the object body, and looking into the history of that. For me, there's like a potential in potentially like unpacking all that has gone into that journey. Because I feel similarly to perhaps the concept of nature, the body is also a concept, and it's increasingly abstract. And that concept, the construction of that concept is so laced with so many deep, problematic aspects of like our Western cosmology. So I feel like if we don't manage to like intervene or like reconsider that notion of what the body can be, then we may not be able to create the kinds of changes that we're hoping for and wishing for on the institutional and governmental and social levels.